Associate Professor Walter Theseira.
Mr. Speaker, the growth of the payment services sector has been marked by tremendous innovation in technology and business models, often called fintech. Payment services can generate economic value beyond just transferring money. Today, payment services firms use financial data and their customer relationships to provide analytics, business process outsourcing, marketing, and credit services. Stripe and Square, two leading U.S. payment services firms, provide an increasing array of business services to merchants. The Payment Services Bill should allow for a competitive market that promotes all types of innovation in payment services between fintech firms and traditional financial institutions. After all, Singapore is a small market, but innovations developed here may allow our payment services firms to reach millions of consumers abroad. There are several aspects of the bill that may affect innovation and competition. Section 20 prohibits payment services licensees from offering credit services. A firm with only a payment services license will have to tie up with a financial institution or apply for the appropriate license to offer credit services. This is an important safeguard because of the risk posed by unregulated consumer lending. However, we should also ensure this does not unduly restrict the potential economic value created by payment services firms. Consumers and merchants alike may benefit from innovative short-term credit facilities that could be less costly than traditional credit cards and consumer loans. High-frequency consumer payments data may well allow for low-risk, small-scale consumer lending. This may be a key area of growth as Singapore fintech firms expand regionally to reach millions of consumers who now have little access to credit. Being able to trial such services in Singapore could be useful. I wish to ask if we have sufficient regulatory flexibility, perhaps through the MAS sandbox, to allow payment services firms to trial innovations that may include credit facilities with appropriate safeguards. In addition, Section 20 also prohibits payment services licensees from using customer funds from e-money to materially finance their operations. While this is an important safeguard, it may also increase the cost of capital for providing e-money services. We should be careful to avoid making e-money services less competitive than alternatives such as direct transfers from deposit accounts or credit facilities. I wish to ask if in practice, payment services licensees will be allowed to reduce or manage the cost of capital by investing customer funds in liquid, low-risk instruments such as government securities. Now, this issue of the cost of capital is also relevant for Section 23, which requires major payment institutions to safeguard customer monies with third-party financial institutions. While safeguards are vital for public confidence, this may make fintech firms dependent on traditional financial institutions who are their direct competitors. Some respondents to MAS public consultation in the Payment Services Bill expressed the concern that traditional financial institutions can be hostile to fintech firms, especially where emerging technologies such as cryptocurrencies are involved. I wish to ask what measures will be taken by MAS to ensure that a competitive market exists for safeguarding services, including directly providing such services as a last resort. Now, Sections 25 to 26 and 51 to 54 on interoperability and the access regime address this problem of barriers to entry created by network effects. Payment services firms operate large consumer and merchant networks. This can be socially beneficial when there are economies of scale or economies of scope in providing services such as analytics, marketing, or business process outsourcing. But networks obviously also can create barriers to entry. The Payment Services Bill will allow for mandated interoperability and an access regime which can ensure that networks are not abused to stifle competition and innovation. I wish to ask if the Minister could discuss what types of market tests, thresholds, or other behaviors could be construed by MAS as requiring enforcement of these provisions. Public discussion of such tests may in fact prevent anti-competitive behavior by payment network operators. Finally, our regulation must remain flexible to promote innovation and growth. Defining the threshold in the bill to define a licensee as a major payment institution seems somewhat inflexible. I wish to ask if such limits could be defined instead in subsidiary legislation by MAS. In fact, the bill already allows for such flexibility by specifying the Section 24 e-wallet transaction limit as the prescribed amount to be determined by MAS. I wish to commend MAS for responding to feedback from the public consultation, which asked for more flexibility on the e-wallet transaction limits. It would be useful if the Minister could share some thinking on what the initial prescribed amounts for transaction limits are likely to be, and the principles behind how regulators will review these limits periodically to support innovation while safeguarding the public. A second issue for regulatory flexibility is that as fintech firms become systemically important, their key appointments will be subject to more oversight by MAS, regulation on fit and proper persons. Now, some fintech firms have expressed concern whether regulators appreciate the different human capital requirements for key appointments between fintech firms and traditional financial institutions. Many fintech firms are headed by entrepreneurs with technology backgrounds rather than financial backgrounds. It will be useful if the Minister could assure the fintech industry that MAS will take these concerns into account when applying the fit and proper criteria. Mr. Speaker, the Payment Services Bill will regulate an important and rapidly growing part of our financial services industry. It is important to ensure that both fintech firms and traditional financial institutions can compete fairly to deliver innovation and growth for all Singaporeans. I support the bill. Thank you.